one thing I said to Shumi back then was, to me, this doesn't even seem like a Bajaj.
Yeah. So I think Bajaj made a quality transition just before the first N250s and all came out. And since then, the product quality has been noticeably better than before. That helps the Freedom a lot. So are there finish issues on this bike? Yes. If you look at the frame, it's a silver colored frame. But the frame, wherever the welds are very, very ugly. They are very well hidden, so you won't obviously notice it. It's not in your eye, but there is a problem for finish there.
Okay.
But does it feel robust?
Yeah.
Yes. Does it feel well made? Yes. Do all the panels fit together neatly? Yes. So there are details that you can question, like the quilting on the seat.
Yeah.
Is it needed? I don't know.
Correct.
Would it have looked nicer without it?
It looks a little insecty in that sense.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that that level of detailing was required. This bike could have been a little bit simpler, but when it comes together, even the guys who shot it in the studio, they were also saying that it has a different stance.
Yeah.
It looks vaguely motardy. I think of it as the child of a GS and a Grom, which is an odd combination if you think about it, but there are clearly GS elements like the silver cladding at the end of the tank.
Right.
But the proportion of the tank reminds me strongly of the Grom. So there are some really nice details. It does stand out. It does look unique, and you can't really classify it as a traditional commuter like a Shine would be.
Correct.
Nor can you really classify it as something a heck of a lot more premium, like maybe a top of the line 160 or 200 would be. So it's a combination of a lot of design that is actually working, and in there are some quirky details. Like for example, the right switch cube.
Right.
There are no switches on this cube. It is just a cube, and it is only holding the throttle cam.
It's just as the engine start there.
It had nothing there, except for the engine start button, which is also unlabeled. So you can almost not notice it.
Correct.
Right? But on this side, it's full. So you've got a new button that just does phone calls. So it has Bluetooth and it just does phone calls. It does not show you any other notifications. So if you press that...
I'm just going to cut in here. This is the thing that I was taken aback with. In terms of what they've engineered the bike as. If they had to do a CNG bike properly, I think they had no option but to do it this way. And that was good. But the direction that they've chosen for this bike, which is, yes, this is going to be aimed towards people who are using it as a daily livelihood tool.
Sure.
Correct? I think that would be the... You also said the Bolero guys were slowing down because it directly impacts their lives.
Yes, it does.
But the sense of quality and upmarketness for a bike that's aimed in that direction is the bit that caught me by surprise.
Yeah, so I think there is the logical reason I would ascribe to that is the fact that this is the anti-incumbency bike for the Splendor. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've seen the Splendor do its thing for the last 20 years and only the Activa has ever come close. Right? Today the Splendor and the Activa are neck and neck, whatever. I think Bajaj has finally figured out a way to get around this problem because remember in the early 2000s, Bajaj went through a series of these commuters, none of which did nothing.
And they were all aimed at doing this.
They were all aimed at doing this. Today they have the Platina and the CT100, CT125, etc. There are 3-4 bikes in there. They might get updated. I'm not saying to CNG, but they might have running life updates happening. But I think the CNG gives them a dramatically different standpoint. Now, if I were Bajaj and say, can this standpoint look like the average commuter today? I think you reduce the impact of this bike. And in theory, if this bike, which is officially called the NG04, according to the label on the bike, if this Freedom becomes sticky, then you can always make a commuter version of this.
What does NG04 stand for?
NG is their internal code for CNG.
I think it stands for Nitin Gadkari.
And 04 tells you that this may not be the only CNG that they were working on, so more CNGs will come. If I were to take a guess, 100cc CNG and a maximum 160cc CNG is what I would do. I would not go beyond this or below this. So to me, this is the first of the Bajaj CNGs. And I think you can easily think of a NG3 being the same bike, but now made to look even more traditionally commutery later after this bike has set the agenda and the tone. But if they were to start looking like a Shine 125e commuter at the start, then that differentiation becomes lower. So they had to do something dramatic, which is why the R1200 GS and the Honda Grom had a baby.
Yeah.
Out came the Freedom, and I think it looks really good.
People have just been milling around the bike in the office.
Yeah.
And every time we're looking at it, there's something to appreciate about the bike.
Yes.
That stance somehow just works.
When they were shooting it in the studio also, they said the same thing, saying it's been a lot of fun shooting this bike in the studio because the stance is different and attractive both. And out in the real world, this blue is, it's a bright blue, but it's not like an unusual blue that you'd notice the color from distance, right? Despite which everybody notices there's something different about this bike. Yeah. And I think that silver thing that they've done at the end of the tank, which reminds you of the GS, I think that's a good detail.
And even the frame around the headlamp.
Yeah, the
I
frame
think
and
that sense of robustness just comes through
yeah,
with that as
and
well.
it feels like that. It feels robust too.
Oh,
What I think they can improve further is finish levels. So
okay.
this trellis frame, and we'll talk about the frame etc. in detail, but this trellis frame is finished in silver, which unfortunately highlights all the welds, and the welds aren't pretty.
Okay.
So wherever through the bodywork you can see the welds, and there are a few places where you can, it doesn't look nice. But when you zoom out, it's a well finished, robust, everything neatly fits together kind of bike. They've overdone a few things and underdone a few things.
Like?
For example, the top of the seat,
Yeah, yeah.
all of that patterning, I don't
And the
know that.
seat is long, like it's really
Yeah,
long.
and the seat is one of the weaknesses of the bike. We'll discuss that in detail. Then similarly, they've organized the switch cube so that this side has everything and this side has the engine kill switch, and it just looks bare. Because even the
It doesn't
CNG,
have an engine kill switch. It's
no, it
just
doesn't
an
have
engine.
it's just a bare thing and an engine
Yeah.
start. But the CNG and petrol switch is on this side.
Correct.
Right? As soon as you swap this, you realize the advantage is I can swap between petrol and CNG whenever I want to. But it just makes this side switchgear look unplanned.
Correct.
Right? Okay, we have pre-production bikes. Maybe there's a label on the final production bike. We'll see. But to me, one mistake, for example, is that when you go to engine off, effectively, in habit terms, then you switch to CNG. When you go to engine on, you switch to petrol. But what you're trying to say constantly is please use CNG, please use CNG, and all the design talks to the idea saying please remain in CNG mode. So to me, this is a careless thing. It just slips
It's
through
the
the cracks.
reverse.
It slips through the cracks, right? And similarly, the length of the seat. We'll discuss it in detail. This seat is going to be a thing that we'll keep coming back to because there are issues in this seat. But fundamentally, when you ride this bike, you don't notice most of these things because it just does its job honestly and well.
Listen, this has been fun, and I think we should take this to the next level. I think our relationship's ready for it. And if you're ready, head to the MotorInc channel where this 3-minute video ends up expanding into a hour-long video, which would be a great way for us to spend time when you're taking a jog, in a flight, commuting to work, or back. We'd love to hang out more.